Welcome to the 12-Step Recovery Evolution podcast. Visit recoveryevolution.co.uk for more episodes, helpful resources and links to our social media. Also visit the site for information on how you can attend a future Zoom session or workshop live. Thank you.
Morning everyone. It was good to listen to everybody this morning, and I know we've all got stuff going on of different degrees of importance, but it is good that we're all here, and it's nice that we're on this journey together and discovering God, because I know at the end of the day that's really going to be the glue that's going to keep all of us together, no matter what we're going through, whether we want to go through things or not. We're going to be going through stuff, and again, like we were saying last week, if you've not got a good foundation, you're probably not going to make it through very well. I'd just like to thank Karen and Dan for doing their chair at the weekend. I've had to listen to them, both very good. Really enjoyed the both of them. I love it when people speak from their heart and share their experience, and not this scripted what you want to hear kind of chairs. They were really good, and we're going to get another couple of guys for this weekend. And so today I wanted to sort of go back a little bit to the On Awakenings, and because for all these guys that maybe just come on or just listening for the first time, is that we sort of started there and then we went backwards, and again we went backwards because, you know, for me, having this opportunity, I think the most important thing I can do is try and help give people a better understanding of the big book, what they're doing. Now, some people may argue the best way to do that is just take you through it. And, you know, I don't disagree with that. That certainly is not off my list. It's quite high up there, probably number 2 or 3 on my list. But what I realised over the years is that even when we used to do our step groups back in Watford, we had beginners groups, and the good thing about the beginners groups is that you'd spend about 4 weeks in them before you did the steps, and so it would explain terms and words, and it would make you kind of familiar with what even the language was all about. Because when I come into recovery, you know, I wasn't very familiar with the language of recovery, and I certainly wasn't familiar with the language of the heart, and I didn't understand, you know, emotions, and I couldn't make sort of cognitive connections to my emotions. I really only had a couple of emotions, and well, probably 3, and one of them was really pleasurable, the other one was really depressed, and the other one was really angry, or maybe 4. One was really fearful, and so it took a bit of time to understand the language. So again, I like doing this because hopefully we're sort of making you a little bit more conscious about what the program's about, and when you're actually going through it. And I know some of you have been through it maybe once, twice, but I do think that it is shocking to me how many people that you question in long-term recovery, and they really don't have a great grip of the fundamentals and the basics. And you know, I don't know. I mean, I think there's only one reason for relapse, and it's powerless. I know people say you relapse because of this, you relapse because of that. But I think there's only one reason I can see for powerless in the big book, and it's powerlessness, because it's saying that's kind of what your problem is. But there was a story that I used to look at a lot where it talks about, I don't know if it's in the 3rd edition, it was certainly in the 4th edition. I don't think it's in the 4th edition, it was in the 3rd edition. But the story talks about a lady who was trying to get her husband to give up smoking, and he relapsed. And then it talked about, you know, if your husband relapses, that he said God either has or he hasn't removed the drink problem. So it says if your husband relapses or if you relapse, it's because God either has, well, God hasn't removed the drink problem. And the reason it's not been removed is probably because you're not work in this program to get the necessarily power to do that, because what the program's saying is this spiritual experience or this spiritual awakening will give you the necessary power. So I just want to go, before we go back to the on awakening, I'm just looking at page, this is in the 3rd edition, it's 569. In the 4th edition, which probably everyone have, and I should probably have, I've got one over here, but it's small print. In the 4th edition, it's 567, and it's something that we use quite a lot in studies and that kind of thing, and I've read it quite a lot over the years. It was left in this edition, and it was called Spiritual Experience, and it's just a couple of pages, and it was kind of put in there as a bit of an amendment from the first edition, but it's worth a read. And it says, the terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested among us in many different ways. Yet it is true that on our first printing, we gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. The first few chapters, in the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing fellowship of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomers are aware of the differences long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such change could hardly be brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of a spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that an alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need to have difficulty with the spirituality of this program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all argument, which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. And that principle, we didn't write this one down, is contempt prior to investigation. So there's a lot in that, and you could probably do a whole group on that, but I wasn't going to today. So then I'm just going to flip back to pages 86, where So I wanted to read that today because, again, we talk about God a lot, and I'm one of the more religious members that he talks about. So I talk in terms of God conscious, but, you know, you can have a power greater than yourself as long as you don't close your mind to them principles that it talks about. Because, again, I like the fact that ultimately it's saying that what we're looking for is inside you. That this God or this power greater than yourself, you know, this unsuspected resource is in you, and but it's being blocked off. And when you actually unblock it, then you start to have this spirit ritual experience. You start to become conscious of this presence that's not there. So, you know, and again, the people that have done this, that have that, then, you know, it's not a matter of do I believe or don't I believe. It's like, mate, look, I can't, if I'm honest, I can't completely tell you what it is, but when they told me this and I done that, that's what I discovered. And it's been fantastic. In actual fact, I've not needed to have a drink since I discovered it, and I don't have to dwell in my resentments, and I don't have to live in my fears, and I don't have to be walking around full of guilt and shame. And, you know, it makes, I can use this feeling in me, this understanding in me helps me make sense of this world. And, you know, with its ups and downs, I'm kind of happy to be here, and that's not always been the case for me. So it's trying to say, but the stuff we have to do, you know, it's not just going to happen. You're not going to catch this off a toilet seat. You're not going to even just catch it sitting in meetings. You know, there's stuff that you have to do, that you actively have to engage in and work on, and some of it in a daily basis. And it does seem a lot complicated, and it does seem, especially when you're new around, that it's all talking about your defects of character. But it's saying, you know, that's a good place to start. That obviously when you first come into recovery, that you have what we'd call gross defects of character. And a gross, it doesn't mean in the sort of the way of gross meaning horrible, but just large, or, you know, very apparent. You know, gross is the reverse of subtle. But we have subtle defects of character, and we have gross defects of character, and then some in between. And, you know, in the early part of recovery, you might get rid of the gross ones, but you never actually look at the subtle ones, and the subtle ones can cause you just as much or more damage than the big stuff. I was taught in the beginning, it said, look, he said you might find a way around a rhinoceros, but the ants are going to kill you. You might find a way around the rhinoceros, but the ants are going to kill you. And I didn't realise what that meant, but it's all these little ones. It's all these little defects of character or little thought processes that you hardly notice. But then when you actually catch them and you realise that they're actually quite big blocks. And when we say block in this context, it means that they're actually stopping me making certain decisions. And so then if I don't make a decision, then I'm not going to open up that path of reality for myself. So if I want to enjoy certain pathways in reality, and there's lots of different pathways in reality, you know, there's lots of different pathways in reality. It's kind of quite funny talking about that. I was watching that Peter Kay. I quite like him. He's quite funny, but he was talking to his nan about the Sky Go, the Sky Box, where you can record it. And she's like, well, what about everybody else when I pause it? She thought when she paused her telly, it paused everybody's telly in the country. And so even like that, this is kind of like that there's many different realities, even though we're all living in apparently the same life. But we get to choose what pathways of reality that we go down by our choices. And if we can't make that choice, then it's going to block that pathway. And so if you want to be sober, but you can't make that choice, then that's going to block your reality of being a sober person. So all through our lives, there's many different pathways of reality. And I found that's what I've discovered on this path of enlightenment that this program has set me on, is that when I make new choices, I open up new possibilities, new realities for myself. I open up new pathways of reality that I've never been down, and I really having start to have very new experiences. And some of that you can kind of see the connection. It's sort of, it can be a little bit obvious, but you know, let me think of one. Oh, for example, what pops in my head was when I was like in early recovery, I got so angry at traffic wardens because I lived on this road where there was no parking, and I lived in this town where there was no parking, and so I'd get a lot of parking tickets. Now, I was getting so resentful, I kind of having thoughts in my head of maybe running over a traffic warden or two, and because it was obviously their fault, and then it was the Zionist regime that was ruling us, and the government and the Illuminati, and it was all their fault that I was getting all these parking tickets because I was going through a lot of conspiracy theories at the time. And then one day my dad said, I was having a moan at him about how wrong it is and that I got to pay all these parking tickets, and he said, why don't you not park on double yellow lines? And it was almost like I heard, la! It was like the angels descended on me, and this light bulb went in my head and went, I never thought of that. I never thought of not parking on double yellow lines. Now, that must have been 15 odd years ago, and I've not had a parking ticket since. So that opened up a whole new reality for me. Now, that's a simple one, and you can apply that to a lot of areas in my life. Certain things just do not happen in my life anymore because I don't put myself in a position, like it says, to be hurt. And a lot of things do happen in my life where I make better decisions for myself. Even in relationships, it can sometimes be hard to upset somebody, but do what's best for me. That can be quite difficult for somebody like myself, and it can be quite frightening at the beginning to say to somebody, no. And I'm sorry that makes you angry, and I'm sorry that makes you feel I don't care, which none of that's true. I do care, but it's just not good for me to make that decision. And it goes on through my life. There's some things, it's like you just cannot see the connection. There's things that you can struggle with all your life. Because when you don't know this, what you tend to do is you start to try and change the outside. You know, when you can't control your emotions on the inside, you start to try and control the world on the outside. Now, when you can't control your emotions on the inside or your thoughts, you automatically start to control the world on the outside. And it's like brushing the mirror. It's like Fox's hair. I'm sure if we had a look under that hat, he's getting ugly out here, isn't it? None of us can get to the hairdressers. But if he took his hat off and looked in the mirror, and which is like looking in the reality, and started to try and brush the mirror to fix his hair problem, then and they go, oh, I don't know, why is it not working for me? Why is it not working? I keep doing all this hard work and I keep brushing my hair and I keep doing all this stuff, but it never works out for me and it never the way I want it. And then you sort of realise with people, look, you're trying to change the outside world. If you brush your hair, the mirror automatically changes. And sometimes you really notice that. And that is kind of what we come to believe is a miracle. When I let go of the past in the present, it creates a new future. And sometimes the outside, the mirror changes automatically. You know, like you could be thinking of being worried about a problem for years, and then something sort of says, well, you need to go and speak to them, or you need to go and do this, or you need to go and do that. But then when you get to that moment of change on the inside and you think, you know what, I'm going to forgive them, it's amazing how often then the phone rings and they're on the phone. And they're like, man, I'm thinking that, we need to talk. Or you know, certain other areas of my life that I thought that are too frightening to change over the years. But as soon as I made the decision on the inside, it seemed to change on the outside, and there was no kind of actual connection that I could see. So this is deeply sort of powerful stuff. So don't underestimate how powerful making them small changes are. And again, at the beginning, I think in doing this program, it's saying, look, at the beginning, you're kind of hopefully making some big changes, but then you start getting in. I think people then kind of let their program kind of go, and they can often go into a very superficial program and not realizing that there's these subtle things going on in this, and you can make very small changes in your life that bring some really big results. But it's learning how to do the correct infantry to discover that. So going back to pages on awakening on pages 86. So we've looked at some of our defects. We've looked at some of the principles, and hopefully you can put together which principle helps to remove each defect. But I think we're going to do some stuff on that in the next week or two. So it says we're going to go back again now, looking at hopefully with a little bit of better information, and that you'll be able to see a lot more clearly what you're being asked to do. Because again, it's like if you don't become conscious, I guarantee you what you're going to do is that when something outside causes you to react, you're going to go back to your old ways. You're going to rely on your old thought processes. Look, it works in individuals as it does in groups of people. Look, when you're running a company and you're trying to bring a new system in, like we are at work, we've got this new system coming in. Now, I know that if I don't keep the managers and keep everybody conscious that we've got a new system, and we just say, look, here's the new system, and then leave everybody, the chances are 9 out of 10 people are going to go back to the old way. See, when we're afraid or we have high emotions, we're always going to go back to the old familiar ideas. So unless we become conscious of what we're changing and how we change it, the result is going to be nil. I know we keep going over that, but I think it's worth the investment. It's worth the investment, again, of saying, look, let's make sure that you're all conscious of your foundation. Let's make sure you're conscious of, one, what we're trying to get rid of, and two, what we're trying to replace it with. And then three, how do we apply it to our life until we can see them changes? Like it said in that spiritual experience, how can we start seeing the manifestation of these new avenues of reality that we're opening in our life, these new experiences that we're having, but we know that them new experiences are happening because we're making decisions based more on spiritual principles rather than on self, our fears, our resentments, our lusts, our greed, or whatever that comes from that lower mind. So it said, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. Remember, we decided that as a meditation. It's not something that we just sort of say, it's something that we actually do. Sit in a chair, spend some time focusing on your 24 hours ahead. Hopefully you've made a list of plans for your day that you've written down, and you're going to consider each plan. You're going to do the visualization. But it's saying before we begin, we do a prayer. We ask God to direct our thinking. So we realizing this is prayer and meditation, especially asking that to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest or self-seeking motives. That's a prayer. That's a powerful prayer, especially if you've got a lot of self-pity or you're dishonest and you have a lot of self-seeking motives. If that's the prayer you need. That's the real game changer for you. It said under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brain. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when it's cleared of wrong, when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So again, that's the goal, clear it of wrong motives, not the goal in itself. The goal in itself is to get to the higher plane. So we don't want to just focus on the negatives, we just want to get that stuff removed. It said, in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Again, we go into prayer when that happens. Now that happens to me quite a lot because I get asked a lot of questions and I'm in a very complicated situations a lot of the time. And I find instead of trying to just rely on my brain power, if I follow these instructions, I get an intuitive thought or decision. It says we relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. Again, I think these are all forms of meditation. We are often surprised how the right answer comes after we've tried this for a right while. So again, you can expect to have this experience of getting this intuitive thought or decision, and it's telling us exactly how to do it, but you're never going to experience that unless you actually practice it. But it's such a simple practice, and it's not fancy. It hasn't even got a fancy name. Even if we called it the relax and don't struggle meditation, it probably don't sound as good as John's Qigong or Brazilian Jitsu. That all sounds a lot more fancy, but I promise you it don't work better than this. This works 100% if you try it. It said what used to be the hunch or the occasional, not saying there's anything wrong with them other things, but this is a simple practice. It says what used to be a hunch or an occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Because, I mean, this is like incredible what it's offering us. It's saying there's this God, there's this higher power, there's this higher consciousness, and it's in us. It's not, we're not going to get it from somewhere else. And if we follow these simple practices, we can expect this to happen in our lives. And then we can make better decisions, and we're open up better avenues of reality for ourselves, and we can help our families and friends make better decisions, and they can open up better avenues of reality for themselves, because we can tell by the fruit. We can see what's happening on the outside. We can see what's, when we're looking in that mirror, because remember, look, none of us have looked in our own face. Nobody's seen their own face. All of us have only ever seen a reflection of our face. So when we're looking in that mirror, we can tell by what fruit we're seeing, what the reflection is. We're learning to read that reflection. We're learning to read that feedback that we're getting from the mirror. What's the mirror doing? Well, this is happening to me. What are you doing? Well, try doing this. Now what's happening? Oh, that's actually better, that is. All right, we'll try adding this to it. Oh, that's really good now. We're looking at what the reflection is, what feedback we're getting from our own life. We're learning to measure the feedback of our own life. Remember when I said I think the problem with most alcoholics and addicts and humanity is that they don't know how to hear. They don't understand. It's a bit of a deaf problem. They're not learning from their feedback. That part of us is gone. This is how we build it in naturally. So being still experienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of actions and ideas. Nevertheless, you know, like it's like with people that just, God told me this, God told me that, can get a bit wacky, get a bit crazy. All of us have been down that path. You know, we sort of start seeing signs everywhere, and you know, it starts firing off all these new neurons in your head, and they're pretty pleasurable, and they can become quite addictive, and people can go a little bit God crazy. There's nothing more hard work than a brand new crazy born again Christian or something, but you know, they tend to calm down as the years go on, and one of them myself, and hopefully have calmed down a little bit. And you know, it's still fantastic to me, but you know, I'm not trying to punch everyone's head in with it. It says we might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking, well, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. So again, it's that continually practicing it. And again, that's the sad thing about the program, is that people don't practice it. They may go to meetings, they may help people, but they don't really practice the program, so they never develop in it. And that's the sad thing. They just tend to then get on with their lives, and they miss this incredible internal journey of coming into a relationship with this power greater than ourselves. it says we come to rely on it. We conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. So we know that was meditation because it says it there, that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. So that's, again, is a prayer that we do at the end. That's another instruction. I've got that down as that's the 7th instruction in this certain chapter here. So now we're going into the day, and that's kind of like the bit with, this is our on a morning bit, but it doesn't leave us, this program. It takes us through to what we do at night, it takes us through the morning, and then it tells us now what we do through the day, because we're practicing these principles in all our affairs. So that's what we do in the morning, and now our mind is starting to move into that day that we've created most of it in our morning meditation, and now we're going to move into it. We're increasing our consciousness, and we're asking that we be shown what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially from freedom from self-will. So we know self-will is not a good thing in your day. So we need to watch out for that. And we need to make sure that's not becoming part of our decision-making process, because otherwise it's going to set in trails of circumstances which are going to bring us some misfortune. And it said we carefully make no request for ourselves only. And again, another prayer, we may ask for ourselves, however, if it helps, if others will be helped. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. Now, I don't think a lot of people do this. Again, my experience. But it's a good thing, it's a good practice to do. And if you're not doing it, give it a go. It says, if circumstances warrant, we ask our wives and friends to join us in the morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination, I mean, a lot of people in AA that have been in a relationship, even through their drinking and drug taking, but their spouses really aren't in Al-Anon or any program or doing anything like that. And I don't understand that. I do. They can't have discovered this wonderful thing inside themselves that is also in their spouse. It's in everybody, but most people aren't aware of this. And that's one of the things I think that we think makes us kind of lucky being alcoholic and addict, that, that if I never went through all that, I never would have discovered this. And I can't imagine what could be better to discover. So it's saying that, it's a good thing to try and get your family involved in. If you're not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize these principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's minister, priest, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right and make use of what they have to offer. Now, this is as we go through the day. Now, there's not a lot of instructions here, but even today, if you can just write this down, just for today, and just try and practice this today and see what happens. Because, I mean, put your hand up, all those I can see, that today, that something or somebody or your imagination or your memory, but some point today, something's going to agitate you. Right. So now when that happens today, now that can happen quite a lot in the day, getting agitated or doubtful. It says, as we go through the day, we pause. Again, I think that's going into that place of meditation. It's going into that place of just let yourself calm down, don't struggle, relax, take it easy. Sometimes I have to say to people when they're really agitating me, it's like, tell you what, man, can you just give us a minute? Because I know if I start answering their questions or interact with them now, I'm probably going to be a little bit more aggressive than I want to be. So if I just give them a minute and calm myself down, sometimes I say to people, man, can we sleep on this? Can I answer this question tomorrow? I try not to answer any questions until the last minute if I can help it, if it's not causing too much distress. I like to make sure that I relax. I like to make sure that I've calmed down. I like to make sure I'm not struggling. Because when I make decisions in that place, I tend to make really good decisions. And if I can't get to that place on my own, I may phone someone up and say, look, can you help me? I'm trying to make this decision, but I've got a lot of doubt in my mind. So I must have a lot of anxiety around it. You know, if there's money involved or, you know, fears or anxieties, then, you know, it can be a little bit harder for me to make a decision, because them fears and them anxieties are going to be pulling on my mind for my ego to give me the answer rather than the spirit. So I know that really that when I relax, when I calm down, and again, I'm pretty sure that you guys ain't the most relaxed or calm people on planet Earth either. But when I relax and calm down, you're always going to get a better decision out of me. So it says, as we go through the day, we pause when we are agitated or doubtful. Now, I wouldn't have thought doubtful. I never would have said that would have been a defect of character. But the truth is, probably I feel my most uncomfortable when I'm in indecision. When I can't make a decision, I feel so uncomfortable. And so being doubtful is such a disturbing emotional state that can cause me to react in all kinds of ways that I wouldn't want to react if I didn't have this way out. If I didn't have this ability to calm down, to turn my mind back to my spirit, and just say, God, what do you want me to do here? Can you give me the right thought or action here? I do that quite a lot. See, so as you can see here, what we're also learning is praying isn't just for Christmas. Praying isn't just for the morning. Praying isn't just for when you go to bed at night. Praying something that we can do all through the day. This is what makes this so fantastic to me. As we start developing this internal conscious contact, that each day when I'm going through my day, because look, things irritate me in the moment. Things irritate me during the day. People irritate me. Situations irritate me. Lots of things actually irritate me. I've always been very irritated. And I'm sure I'm very irritated for other people. But I can't get away from the fact I'm easily irritated. And if I don't have this solution in the moment, I don't want to be chewing some shop assistant's another arsehole and then having to go back all the way to Norwich 2 days later to say I'm sorry. I'd rather not do it in the first place. But also, if it's happening to me and I'm feeling irritated, I want something to say inside me, Lester, you're getting irritated, calm down. Now, I do have something outside of me called my wife, and she's really good at it, and I've learned to listen to her. But even then, that's not foul-proof. Depends how irritated I am. But I know that when I get back to this place, where I can ask for the right thought or decision to come, it often does come. And then I feel the presence of the Creator. I feel the presence of God, like it says. And then I feel myself calming down. And then I start making good decisions again. And then I get on with the kind of life and live the kind of day that I would like to live. And then when I look back at the end of my day, like somebody asked, do I still do infantry at night? Well, not really, because I'm doing it as I go through the day. I'm trying to develop that consciousness in the moment. And it says we constantly remind ourselves. So again, it's like all through the day. Now, I know this might sound like a bit of a chore and a bit of bind, and even some people go, well, that sounds a bit negative, but it does become a working part of your mind because it makes me more conscious. So I think the truth is, I think the overall reward I get from this, apart from the fact I don't have to drink or take drugs anymore to anaesthetize the pain of not doing this, I think I get to live 10 times more life than other people. And what I mean by that is, when you're living through this toilet roll of obsession, your emotions and your senses are very narrow-minded. But see, now I notice that when I'm actually talking to people, I can hear what they're saying, I can understand what they're saying, I can hear the birds singing, I can feel the wind on my face, I can smell whatever's going on, I can even be having a little bit of a daydream over here. And I just noticed that my senses are so much more alive in the moment, that I experience so much more. And when all them moments aren't happening and a bird lands in my bird bath, I don't know why that's so wonderful. I don't know why some moments, just some thoughts, some ideas, some experiences in that moment are just so wonderful. And someone asked me not so long ago, why do you think you try and be so honest? Because they're not. They're not honest. They like to pretend they are. And so when they phone me up, they seem to crumble into this trying to like justify themselves. I don't care. I mean, I wish they were more honest for themselves. And he said, why do you think you're trying to be so honest? I said, I don't know, mate. I never really thought about it, except when I was dishonest, I wasn't very happy. And now I try and be more honest. I just feel a lot more peace and I got a bit more conscience. And I said, but I never really thought about it in them terms. He said, what do you get out of it? I said, well, the truth is I don't get more money. I said, being honest don't necessarily get you more money. It probably gets you less money, if anything. I said, and I don't think it makes you live any longer because it's quite stressful being honest in this world. It's quite difficult. And then that thing happened. The bird landed in my bird bath. And I just filled with this incredible pleasure and feeling of well-being. And then I remember all the moments in my life that I get like that. And I said to him, mate, you asking me that, I just realised what I get is I get all these wonderful moments. I said, and I know you don't get many of them. You probably get a few because you're always worrying and rushing around. You're always stressed. You're always miserable. You're always tired. You're always striving. So even when you go on like all these fancy holidays, I'm pretty sure you're only doing it to mechanically try and have this incredible experience. But I can't imagine that if you went up the Himalayas on top of Mount Everest, you'd feel any better than I do looking at this bird in a bird bath. I said, so that's why I think I do it, for these moments that I get. And some of them are not great. Those are pretty bad moments. So he's saying we constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show, which is this lower self, this selfishness, self-centeredness. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. Now, I've got to tell you, I don't know how many millions of times I've said that, and that's still one of my greatest prayers, because it's kind of like, it's a prayer of just acceptance. And I usually say it when things are not going well for me, when I'm in a difficult situation and I don't know what to do. I usually go into that quiet place, that thy will, not mine, be done. It says we are then, and again, these are almost promises as well. It says we are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, worry, anger, self-pity, or foolish decisions. It says we become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we have not been burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. And again, that could be me writing that. I promise you. Following this, it could be me writing that. It says we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in this simple way we have just outlined. This is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. So again, it may seem like we've just been banging on about the same thing, but it's just trying to get everyone back to this simple practice. And again, we know whether you're doing it because you'll be telling us of the results. bye.